I'm Patrick, and I'm joined by my co-host, Fritz.
And every week, we'll bring you guys a crime of interest. Some solved, while others may have went cold. Join us.
Many people fantasize about being a hero. There are tons of stories that recognize acts of heroism and rightfully reward the heroes in some fashion. Now picture this. You react to a situation in a manner that saved countless lives, only to be accused as being the perpetrator. This was the case for one security guard. This is Crime Anatomy. Richard Jewell. At 12:58 a.m. on July 27, 1996, with the Summer Olympics in full swing, the Atlanta Police Department received a 911 call from an anonymous caller saying, quote, "There is a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes," unquote. The caller, a male, hung up immediately. Police attempted to check the source, but it was too late. At 1:20 a.m., a pipe bomb exploded near a huge sound and light tower, which had become a major attraction for visitors to Centennial Olympic Park. The blast killed 2 people and injured 111 others. In the days following, law enforcement agencies began to focus on a security guard named Richard Jewell, who initially had been praised for helping evacuate the area. The media was quick to publish the police suspicions. The Richard Jewell story presented the media with an irresistible read, the tale of a hero turned suspect in the bombing at the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta. So as we mentioned, this week is on Richard Jewell. Richard was a security guard. He was working the Olympic Games, so that day was significant for him because he had the runs. I'll keep it at that. So at work around 10 p.m., he decided to use the restroom. And right when he got outside, he noticed a group of kids littering and drinking beer. As he ran over to approach these young teenagers drinking, most likely underage, he noticed a green backpack underneath a bench. And mind you, a week before, he noticed a bag as well. There's 2 sides to it. You can say there's something a little suspicious about this bag, or people leave their bags every day.
Yeah, and you mentioned the terrorists. I believe right around that time, this happened in 1996, the Olympics. Right around that time, the Oklahoma bombing happened sometime in those years as well.
In this case, he's 1,000% going to be hypervigilant and be proactive with any case, right?
Definitely. Especially being security guard. Had to have some type of training.
Well, we'll get to that because as we speak now, we know him to be a security guard, but his past told us otherwise. So in this case, what do you do? What anyone would do. He noticed the bag was unattended to. He called over the kids that he just scared off, asking if the bag was theirs, and they said, no, not ours. So now his antennas are going all the way up. He tells one of his supervisors about the bag, and eventually they call the park's bomb squad, and eventually the bomb experts show up to attend to the bags. Bomb experts come over and they confirm that it is indeed a bomb. So at this moment, Jewell, his colleagues, and other supervisors quickly hurry to clear the scene of the bag under the bench. So at this point, Jewell is looking like a hero. He notices the bag. He calls his supervisor over, who calls the bomb experts, and now he's helping clear the area. When the bomb does eventually explode, the concussion from the bomb knocks Jewell forward, sends him sprawling on the ground, and if if you can envision the scene. There's smoke everywhere, and there's a smell of gunpowder residue.
And the scary part about that is, since it was the Olympics, I'm sure there were all these other festivities going on. A lot of people probably didn't even know what was going on at the time.
Yeah, and it was mentioned that some people believe it was firecrackers, not knowing that it was an actual bomb. It was after the case where all of the police officials, FBI, GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, when all of them showed up and canceled all the events afterwards, this is when everyone knew this is something serious. I haven't been around any bombs, so this is news to me.
Thank goodness.
After doing research on this topic. There's the loud noise, and then there's a sudden deathly quiet. And I'm pretty sure that's people. Yeah, it's true. I'm pretty sure that's when your ears ring and you can't hear anything.
Exactly.
Right. And in cases of bombs, it's not the bomb or the fire from the bomb that's hurting you. It's the shrapnel that's actually you're getting hit by from the bomb. Remember, it was over 100 people that were injured, and mostly from shrapnel. And the two people that died, it was one woman, I forget her name, and the second person that died, actually, he was a cameraman or photographer. He was running to the scene, collapsed, and died of a heart attack. So minutes following the blast, it was reported that Jewell was attending to the fallen victims and helping them to safety. In this case, he's still the hero.
Right.
So in the immediate aftermath, Jewell is celebrated as a hero. He's a local celebrity, so to speak. He goes to all sorts of ABC networks, Katie Couric, does all these interviews, and he's celebrated and paraded as a hero, of which he seems to be in this case, right?
And I mean, he was doing what most people would have done in that situation. There were a lot of people in need, so he lent a hand any way that he could.
Well, some people are self-preserving. I don't want to say where I land on, but yeah, most people are self-preserving, and some people, like a police officer, which he was before he was the security guard, are self-serving and they give their lives for people, like firefighters in 9/11, as we know. They give their lives for people. These people are to be commended, and he was in the immediate aftermath. So after the explosion, the FBI theorized that the blast was probably an act of domestic, not foreign terrorism. And I'm going to give you guys a little tidbit that may come into fruition in the upcoming episodes. The investigators at that time paid early attention to an extremist militia organization in Alabama. We'll leave it at that for now. Jewell, on the day of and the day after, was interviewed by the FBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. In this case, he was interviewed not as a suspect, but as a witness. Everything changed on July 28th. As he was being paraded on CNN, not everyone is your friend. Your past can come to haunt you. So as he was being paraded and being seen on CNN on different networks, a gentleman by the name of Ray Clear, who was a president of Piedmont College. This is a college that Jewell actually worked before working the Olympics. Jewell worked at the college as a security official as well.
Mm-hmm.
So Ray Clear, the president, was watching it and he said, "Hold on, what's going on here?" So he calls the FBI and saying, "Guys, you guys have to look into Richard Jewell. He may have been involved in planting the bomb." And this was based on problems Jewell's actually had earlier when working as a policeman at the school.
Yeah, okay. I was just going to ask, what did he have against Jewell?
It was something about Jewell's character. Maybe he was a person that liked attention or sought attention. Maybe Ray Clear was being a hero or thinking he was being a proactive hero in this case. But this call to the FBI changed Richard Jewell's life.
This basically set off a string of events to come.
Yes, as we will see, for the worse. Considering the suggestion from Ray Clear, Agents recalled a case in Southern California not long before in which a voluntary firefighter had apparently set a series of fires so that he could extinguish them and become a hero. And later that same day, the idea that Jewell was criminally involved was passed along the FBI officials in Washington during a conference call with the Atlanta field office. Also, a participant in the call mentioned that a security guard in the 1984 Olympic Games in LA had planted a bomb on a bus so that he could discover it and become a hero. FBI headquarters agreed, and in this instance, they conducted a preliminary investigation of Jewell's background. This one call from Ray Clear set off, as you mentioned, a string of events.
I'm not a detective, nor am I an FBI agent, but I would think you would need a little more than that to do an investigation.
Let's talk about why there's such a rush to find a suspect in this case. So we have to consider the stakes. This was the Olympics, and everyone, meaning the world, was watching. So this one event, they had to catch someone ASAP to make it seem like everything was okay and the Olympic Games can go on with peace.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because otherwise, there's a lot of dollars at risk there. And
tension, apprehension. Most people aren't going to attend the events. Sponsor dollars are going to dwindle. Yeah, this was a case where they had to find that suspect immediately. So any line of evidence will do.
Oh, and I mean, something even more powerful than that. This was the Olympics. Other countries were participating. So you had to show other countries that you're in control of your own country.
And your country is safe.
Exactly. That's a good point.
So the FBI agents did a background check on Richard Jewell. Let's go down that lane and get a quick little history on Richard Jewell, the person. Jewell had a complex history, working at the local sheriff's office. When he was a jailer, he arrested a couple making too much noise in the hot tub at an apartment building where he did part-time security.
Oh, wow. So right away, he seems to be the type of person who takes their job too seriously.
We've all been around people like that. So is that enough to say he's a bomber? Not quite.
No, not at all.
In that very instance where he arrested a couple, remember, at this time, he's not a sheriff or a deputy. He's just a jailer. So he doesn't really have power to yield arresting someone or putting someone in handcuffs. So being that, he was arrested for impersonating an officer.
Whoa.
Pleaded guilty to lesser charges and was placed on probation. Also, he was placed on probation on the condition he sought psychological counseling. Not enough to say he's a bomber, but his past is a little shaky.
Yeah, and so this is the grounds which they may see him as being someone who wants to be applauded so badly that he would plant, or he would basically stage the whole deal, the whole situation.
Still a little weak evidence to stand on, but it's not looking good on his behalf. But it didn't stop there. We had more on Mr. Jewell. So later that year in 1995, he wrecked his police car and was demoted to working in the jail. But he hated the jail atmosphere. So he eventually resigned. And after that, he took a police job at Piedmont College. Remember Piedmont College? The college where Ray Clear is the president at. So he took this job after resigning from the sheriff's department. And his issues didn't stop there. His jurisdiction was obviously limited to the campus, but he would occasionally be seen chasing speeding cars on the highway. Okay. Overstepping his boundaries and jurisdiction. Not a good look, but not to say he's a bomber.
Yeah, still not enough evidence for that. 100%.
But it doesn't stop there. More shaky grounds for Richard Jewell. And the trajectory we see is pretty straightforward. He's He's a person that takes his job too serious and oversteps his boundaries. At the college, he would raid dorm rooms and report drinking violations. That's part of his job, so can't kill him on that.
Mm-hmm.
And he soon made enemies at the school. Peterman students would constantly go to the office of Ray Clear, the president, complaining about Jewell. And after being admonished for an abundance of controversial arrests, he later resigned. But Jewell had an out. His mother was going to have an operation on her foot. And in this instance, Jewell said, you know what? This gives me an opportunity to, one, take care of my mother. So move back home and take care of my mother. And two, the Olympics are coming. I'll work a gig at the Olympics and it'll look good on my resume. So that's what led him to the security position he had currently.
So then the security position was a stepping stone to get back into being a police officer.
Or so he said.
Okay.
But I understand why he said it, because obviously the Olympics is a big time thing.
Right.
To have something like that in your resume, nothing to look down upon. Okay, so now that we took a memory lane on Richard Jewell and his troubled background, let's jump back to current day, July 29th. FBI headquarters concurred with the Atlanta's assessment in that Jewell fit the profile of a person who might create an incident so he could emerge as a hero.
What's the description for that profile?
Duly noted. We'll put a bookmark on that question right there. In a more detailed written analysis, the profiling team said Jewell's account of the bombing seemed vague on important points and that he seemed uncomfortable discussing the victims. The analyst also suggested that he may have believed that making himself a hero at the Olympic Games would help him land a job in the field. So maybe remember we mentioned, but I considered it a different way. Just looking good on your resume. I don't know. That's a little far-fetched for me, but I'll go with them for right now.
Yeah, but if you have it that you're a hero on your resume, that definitely puts you at the top, though.
1,000%. At this point, at the end of July 29th, Jewell had become the FBI's principal, though not only, suspect in the scent bomb investigation. So from hero to zero in a matter of days. That's a true nightmare. If you're innocent.
That's a good way of putting it.
In the upcoming day or so, it all became a haze, and his life at that moment turned upside down. He started his day early on the Today Show, and on the evening before, he and his friend Tim Attaway, who's a GBI agent, Georgia Bureau of Investigation. I never knew that was a thing, but apparently that's a thing. He and Tim Attaway had dinner, and during the dinner, Jewell talked the night away about the bombing. And it seems like he was glorifying in the instance. And little did he know, Tim was wearing a wire. See, the plot thickens. As he went home from the busy day to his apartment, there were clusters of reporters outside of his parking lot. Listen, at this moment, Joe believes he's a superstar.
Yeah.
He's thinking, oh, they want my autograph or something. Or they want off-the-cuff interviews.
And he's been on plenty of shows beforehand. So, big-time shows too. So
yeah. Right now, in this case, it's of the norm. So he doesn't think anything of it. And remember, this is not 2020 where we have our smartphones and we can see updates on everything. 1996, there's no smartphones around. At this time, he hasn't watched the news.
News traveled a little more slowly back then.
Exactly. And in the case of a newspaper, he probably hasn't seen a newsstand or been around a newsstand. So it'll be tough for him to get up-to-the-minute news in 1996. Funny enough, as he approaches the crowd of reporters, they start asking him, you know how reporters are. Is the fun thing about reporters.
The
Are you
question.
guilty? Are you guilty? Is the person going to say he's guilty? No, not really. But they start asking them, do you think you are a suspect?
Sounds like TMZ.
I know, right? TMZ before TMZ. So in this case, she was like, oh, no. Why would I be a suspect? I'm the hero. So he's saying, oh, they're probably looking at everybody. They're probably going to look at you guys as well. Laughing it off. Not thinking anything of it. Little did he know, behind the scenes, the Atlantic Journal-Constitution, which was a local journal, the big journal in Atlanta, they ran a story that day, that Tuesday, July 30th, naming Jewell as a suspect.
Mm-mm.
The banner headline over the story said, quote, FBI suspects hero guard may have planted bomb.
Oh.
And boom,
Life
there goes the
changing.
dynamite. Yeah.
Those are the ones that hurt worse as in boxing terms or fighting terms. The ones that you don't see coming.
Can't imagine how he must have felt. At this point, he doesn't even know the article has been printed. Keeping on with the article, in the body of the story, it said, Richard Jewell, 33, a former law enforcement officer, fits the profile of the lone bomber. And the lone bomber was actually a term coined by the agents that did the background check on Richard Jewell. And remember, you raised the question on how do they know he fits a particular mode? Is that mode accurate? We'll get to that in a little bit. Keeping off the story or the article that was printed by the Atlantic Journal-Constitution, it later said, this profile generally includes a frustrated white man who is a former police officer, member of the military or police, quote unquote, wannabe, who seeks to become a hero. I don't want to talk ahead, but it seems like they're molding this particular concept to fit a scheme or fit a person.
Yeah, it looks very tailor-made.
Exactly like Richard Jewell. This isn't good for Richard at this point. Several states away, Colonel Robert Ressler was watching CNN, and he actually saw the Atlanta Journal-Constitutional extra. Let me give you some background on who Colonel Ressler is. One, he was retired from the behavioral science unit on the FBI, so he has a lot of sway. Also, he developed the concept of criminal personality profiling. All of these profile units that have been established are coming from that one base. He also was the co-author of the Crime Classification Manual, which is used by the FBI. So, more on Colonel Ressler. He interviewed Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, and John Wayne Gacy. So he's been around sociopaths, psychopaths, you named them.
So, in other words, Colonel Ressler would be able to identify whether or not Jewell fits this profile.
Or
doesn't.
Or if this profile actually exists.
Or that, huh?
This was coming from a report that was done at the time. Watching the TV, he was mystified hearing the words fitting the profile of a lone bomber. In his mind, he's thinking maybe they're confusing it with a hero homicide. So a hero homicide is a person looking for recognition without an intent to kill. Remember, the bombing killed 2 people. 1 person from the bomb, second person from a heart attack. But without the intent to kill. Perhaps maybe that, the hero homicide definition, they merged that into the hero bomber or the lone bomber, as they mentioned. But the hero bomber or the lone bomber, and at that point, there was no classification of a hero bomber. It was a myth.
Wow.
So our theory of the investigators, I'm not sure who it was, GBI, FBI, them molding a particular classification to fit Richard Jewell sort of works in this case, if we're going by Colonel Ressler.
Yeah, makes sense.
Also, more to pile on the investigators, Colonel Ressler said the bomb was deadly, so that's not consistent with a hero complex. Also, where did the information to put the profile together come so fast? And these are words from him. He says, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Was the so-called profile actually developed for the circumstances? Or was it invented for Richard Jewell?
See, it's always good to have someone who's been through a certain situation before to shed some light on things that just doesn't add up.
Yeah, so an objective or unbiased expert is necessary.
I agree.
At this point in the story, who's to believe? We don't know. Jewell has a fishy background. Doesn't mean he's a bomber. We can't say. The FBI, they're doing their due diligence. Are they cutting corners to make something fit? Maybe, according to Colonel Ressler. After the leak of the Atlantic Journal-Constitutional Report, the FBI, or actually before that, the FBI had been planning to conduct a non-confrontational interview with Richard. This is before the news came out, but they had to expedite the process because the news is out, and if you want something to be non-confrontational, you don't want them to believe that you're looking at Jewell as a suspect.
Right.
So in that case, they had no choice. The parking lot was swarming with media, as we mentioned before, but they had no choice. A couple of agents, Don Johnson and Deadler Rosario, they knocked on Jewell's door and they told him, hey, can you come with us to the FBI headquarters to help us make a quote unquote training film?
See what they did there. So basically they're playing to his ego. They're stroking his ego almost, saying, hey, you're a hero. Why don't you come help us out? Yeah, you're exactly. You took the words right out of my mouth.
And mind you, Richard is a lifelong ambitious cop. He went to the police academy, obviously. He worked at the sheriff's department. He worked at the school where he was overstepping his boundaries. And remember, he tried to essentially get back into law enforcement by working security at the Olympics. So they're, like you mentioned, they're stroking his ego and they're playing with his pride, or they're making his pride work against him in this case. Mind you, Richard, at this case, still hasn't seen the newspaper, one, and he hasn't put on news. Surprisingly, he hasn't put on news. Maybe at this case, it's a little different because maybe at this case, it wasn't a 24-hour news cycle, one, or maybe he didn't have cable like CNN because cable was not as accessible back then as it is now. And maybe he didn't have cable like CNN or anything else. At that time, that was the only 24-hour news cycle channels. You're not going to put on CBS or ABC at that time and have breaking news. Nonetheless, he did not see the report as the officers urged him to go with them to the headquarters to make this training video. He had no doubt in his mind that they were being truthful, despite the reporters in the parking lot. He had no doubt in his mind. They were telling the truth.
So here's a situation where social media would have come in hand.
The devil of today, social media. Yeah, there's many benefits to social media. Direct access to information was lacking back then in 1996.
Right. Oh.
After playing with his ego, he agreed to voluntarily be interviewed by the FBI, and he would go to the offices downtown. He said, you know what? There's some reporters outside. How about I follow you guys with my truck? I don't want these guys to think that I'm a suspect or anything. So they say, you're right. Follow us. Again, they're like, oh, he doesn't really know. Okay, let's play along.
They're playing them the whole time. They're playing.
That works for us. So now they reach the FBI headquarters and they sit Richard in a small office. Mind you, Richard still believes he's a paraded hero. But there's some suspicion going on because the cameraman who's filming the quote-unquote training video is starting to stare at him intently. He's wondering, why is he staring at me like I did something? And after about an hour of interviews, both agents were called out of the room. And when they returned, the energy shifted. They mentioned to Jewell, let's pretend that none of this actually happened. So let's pretend that you're going to come in and start over. And by the way, we want you to fill out this waiver of rights. Imagine what's going on in his head at this moment. He's a former police official. He knows what a waiver of rights means.
So he has an idea.
So now the naivete of him being the paraded hero is slowly shifting, because why would I have to sign my waiver of rights for a training video? I also have to mention that Richard Jewell is a Southern guy. He has a Southern drawl, and he's very polite. After every sentence he says, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. So some people not from a Southern background, they may believe maybe he's a little gullible and not as smart. So in this case, they believe they can take advantage of him.
Right. So did he ask any questions when they gave him that form to sign?
What he wisely did was said, whoa. Let me contact my attorney.
Yep.
Energy changed.
Good job.
The energy totally changed after that. They're saying, wait. Why do you need to contact your attorney? What did you do? Did you do anything wrong? I thought you were a hero. Is there something you want to tell us about? 180-degree change. Now, Jewell is becoming increasingly apprehensive. He knew that they thought he did it.
Wow. So it went from Jewell just being, thinking that he's going in there to help, to now him having
I may be in trouble.
Yeah, having to call your lawyer.
And he doesn't have a lawyer at this case. He has a friend. So he asks to use a phone. He gets the phone and he calls Watson Bryant. Watson Bryant, you guys will get to know him. But for one, he's a long time of Richard. And he's also an attorney. When he called Watson multiple times, there was no pickup. Imagine the scariest moment you're going through right now, and the one person that could help you doesn't answer the phone. That's a scary feeling. So he leaves a message for Watson. Calls Watson's brother, calls his mom. No one seems to pick up, but the message was left. Luckily, this was 1996, and apparently in 1996, everyone walks. So as Watson Bryant was walking, he saw in the corner of his eyes a paperboy. This had to be 1996 if there's a paperboy around. Remember, that was a job back then, remember? That was a job I wanted. I would watch it in movies. You would ride a bike and just
throw the paper.
Throw papers, throw the paper to the porch of the customer.
Well, I haven't seen a newspaper.
They gotta bring back that job.
Yeah, right. Well, I haven't seen a newspaper in I don't know how long, to be honest with you.
Let's go back to the story. He saw the paper boy. I have to keep saying that because it's wild.
Can't believe it.
It seems like a lifetime ago. He saw the paper boy, and then at the corner of his eye, he read the headline. The headline read, "FBI suspects hero guard may have planted bomb." In this case, he's not putting two and two together. He knew beforehand that Richard did help victims when the bomb occurred, because Richard called him immediately after the fact and said, "Hey, do you think I can get a book deal?" And Watson just laughed him off. Said, "I don't think you got a book deal from that." So he knew Richard was involved in some way. It was not until he saw Richard's face on TVs or TV screens on outside of stores. It was not until he saw Richard's face on a TV screen and he put two and two together, like, what's going on? So he reacts quickly. First things first. Remember, this is 1996. He actually had a cell phone in his car, a car phone. So first things first is he calls the FBI headquarters and demands to speak to Jewell. Well, that's big money back then, for real. So he calls the FBI headquarters and demands to speak to Richard Jewell. First of all, how do you know the number of the FBI?
That's a good question. I guess he's a lawyer, but still.
So he called to speak to Richard Jewell, and the operator said, "Nope, he's not here."
Oh wow.
Okay, he says, "Okay, you know what? Let me call my house phone." So you can back then you can call your house phone, and there's like a way you can actually get the messages from your house phone. Us millennials aren't familiar with that, but yeah, you could call your number to get your messages from your phone. So he called. He heard the message from Richard Jewell, but didn't have a number. This is another thing. Bring everyone back down memory lane. How do you get a number, a callback number?
Star 69.
Yes, he dialed star 69, and the callback number said 679-9000. This is before area codes was used. Man, it seems like a lifetime ago. But yeah, 679-9000. That was the number of the FBI headquarters that he just dialed. So boom, he knows Jewell is there. He calls again. He gets Richard on the phone, and Richard says, "Oh, I'm at the FBI headquarters just making a training film for the FBI." And he's thinking,
did he really believe that? Yeah, did Richard really believe that? I thought it seemed like he was under suspicion that
he was apprehensive.
Right.
Like he didn't think he was a suspect. He definitely didn't know he was named a suspect. So Watson is saying, "You idiot! What are you doing? You're a suspect. You got to get out now." And that moment, Watson Bryant became Richard Jewell's attorney.